Hello, that's me again. Today is the 12th of April, and it is an extremely important date in the history of humanity. Why, you may ask? Because of that. Today is the 62nd anniversary of Yuri Gagarin being the first man in space. As RT reports, exactly 62 years ago, Yuri Gagarin made his flight into the unknown. For people who do not understand what I am talking about in terms of the scale of the event, you better look up what is called British Pathé, I believe. This is their video reports and news as presented by British at the time when they actually did have a serious media. And he was, the way Yuri Gagarin was accepted, for example, in Buckingham Palace, and everywhere he went, from the United States to Great Britain to Italy to what have you, and India, he had millions of people meeting him and greeting him. And the event was so huge that, of course, after that, many people will continue to deconstruct it, primarily in the West, because obviously at that time, up to 1967, practically everything what has been done in space, from first satellite, obviously, in 1957, to, of course, Gagarin's historic flight on April 12th, 1961, every single first space was done by Soviet Union. United States was really unhappy about it, and of course it ended up with the triumph of the United States landing on the moon, which was absolutely historic event in itself, and a huge achievement of the American technological genius. Although, yeah, there are some people who say, no, it's primarily German technological genius because of von Braun being the guy who was running the US space program. But then again, without American resources, that flight and then what followed, several flights to the moon, couldn't have been possible. For anybody who believes that United States never landed on the moon, please turn off this video and just go find, some other things to do in your life, because it is absolutely confirmed by both Russians and Chinese that there are, you can see that even the landing sites, namely of the Apollo 14, I believe, or you will correct me if I'm mistaken with the number, but no. And neither Buzz Aldrin nor Neil Armstrong ever admitted that it was all fake. Speaking of which, considering the colossal, it was just gigantic impact, not only media, it was the civilization-defining event, this flight by Yuri Gagarin. Of course, we can remember this wonderful thing, but this is one from one of those greats, American greats, second man who stepped on the moon, Buzz Aldrin. And look what he wrote when some dean, I believe, for faculty or something like that, Professor Bordalejo, presented at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology the cover of the November 2012 MIT Technology Review, which quotes moonwalker Buzz Aldrin. And look what Buzz Aldrin, legendary Buzz, said. "You promised me Mars colonies. Instead, I got Facebook." And as the story goes, from people who have been there, instantly a handful of students protested that Facebook is a substantial invention, that it does have major impact on society. You can bet your ass it did, in the worst possible way. And even that the colonization of Mars may be not that desirable at all. But obviously, Aldrin criticizes the shift from tackling big problems to small problem stuff. And Facebook is a small problem stuff. It's and again, Facebook produces nothing except for all kinds of psychological and mental disorders for people, and it's a completely useless thing. And if you will remove Facebook, tomorrow some kind of the ass book maybe will be in making by a bunch of other people who write code and who know how to put together some kind of the network. And this is what it comes to expose, a complete misunderstanding of what real economy is, what resources are, because some people still think that Facebook is equaling in terms of the space flight, and it's significant, which it is not. not even in the same universe. And of course, unlike few buildings here and there with a bunch of the servers, granted, servers are the products of the advanced computer design and computer manufacturing, which is of course productive activity of the humanity, but what they serve primarily, and let's be honest, the whole internet exists for three things. It's porn, boobs, and cats. And that's the only thing. The segment where people actually exchange wonderful ideas on the internet or use it for some useful purposes is fairly small compared to the rest of it. And so we have the situation that people still do not understand, many people, not all, what their space flight is, what it involves, and how gigantic industrial, scientific, technological, educational resources go into it. And that was what Buzz Aldrin was talking about. And yes, me, the same as Buzz Aldrin, I'm very disappointed that we really stopped trying as a humanity. But looks like Russians and Chinese are really seriously and hell-bent to be on the moon fairly soon. But even since the start of the space programs and the space race, which, by the way, United States won the interplanetary so far stage of it, but it's nowhere near the end of the space race. There is a space race. There is a race to develop resources, and some of the parts of American space program, for example, are magnificent. American unmanned study of the outer space, interplanetary space, and obviously sending all those probes all over. This is magnificent achievement in itself. It's outstanding. So we have to always keep this in mind, and of course it goes, to work for the humanity. But as always, with success of Gagarin and Russian first flight was such that we had this guy, Mr. Oberg. By the way, he is this former NASA engineer who became the journalist. He's with this Mark Kelly guy. Remember, the senator and the guy who flew 3 times on space shuttle, who stated that Russians cannot fly information about Air Force. And here's the guy who also spent most of his life as a journalist, basically belittling and putting dirt on a Russian space program until, of course, we can see now today that United States beginning to fall back and behind China and Russia, and in terms not only resources, but in terms of the fact that if not for Russians, there will be no International Space Station, and Mr. Kelly won't fly there. And James Oberg, one of the famous and most favorite shticks about this whole thing was that, oh yeah, Russians, they just lag behind, in computers and all that stuff. Look at this Soyuz vehicle, which is like 50 years old. Well, it flies, right? Don't fix it if it ain't broken. But their famous shtick was, oh, look at those, there's still analogous instruments there. And of course, they were lying, because even in 2010, they were showing the old 1990s and early 2000s Soyuz when it did a lot of analogous instruments. Obviously, modern Soyuz vehicles look like this. They are all digitized, and they have very nice onboard computer, and these are the most reliable space vehicle in history. And what can I say? It still flies and will continue to fly for a while until the Federation spaceship goes online, probably in the next couple of years, and then we'll see development of the lunar program by Russians and Chinese. And the only good news for an International Space Station that Russia said, okay, we're going to extend our presence on the ISS and maintenance of the Russian segment of ISS, which is about half of the ISS, till 2028. And these are good news. And again, if you look at the general relations between Russian and American cosmonauts and astronauts, they are really good, professional ones. With the exception of Mark Kelly, of course, who is a sore loser and butthurt that Russians, cannot fly information. So, there you go. But this is what brings us back to our headlines, which I wanted to kind of discuss with you over that. For example, Mr. Putin today, speaking of the obviously conference, a meeting which was marking the anniversary, 62nd anniversary of Gagarin's flight, he spoke to people of Russian industry and science that he gave the order to dramatically increase their production of the satellites. And he mentioned the fact, just listen about this fact, that 100 launches without any failure. They tell about the development of Russian space industry. So there you go. So, and we should know by now about Russia and Putin. He never gives the order unless it is already have been implemented to some degree, and you know that it will be successfully completed. And that is why when he speaks about the dramatic increases, significant increase of the production of the satellites, that means one thing. For people who have any degree of logic and even basic facts about Russia, obviously, that means what? Yes, good speed of the development of the domestic Russian electronics, because satellites are primarily electronics, and other means of launch, and so that pretty much tells you everything you need to know. And of course, many of those satellites will be used in the military for the military purposes, and you know what? Russians have been launching satellites. I believe 7 launches till today, start from the 1st of January. And they will continue to launch it, including the completion of the project Sphere. But I spoke a little bit about Sphere, and since we're talking about those, backward Russians, if you wish. So we might as well remember something which also came about in terms of other branch of industry of Russia. And that one is really stunning. Here it is. Mr. Manturov, who is the Minister of the Industry and Trade, speaking today at the Federation Council, showed some really interesting signs of revitalization of Russian shipbuilding industry, and it was on the upswing, so to speak. It was improving dramatically for the last 10 years, and look what this. The RT headline says that Russia reveals massive shipbuilding plans, and here it is. The Russian government is planning to have about 150 cargo ships built by 2027 as a part of a preferential leasing project, Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov has revealed. And here comes this strategic news. This is absolutely crucial. Just listen what they says. Manturov, who also heads up the Ministry of Industry and Trade, said that the Russian National Wealth Fund will help with the construction of 260 vessels, new vessels. First, the number is stunning, really, but again, as I already stated that Russians were improving in terms of the quality and quantity of the ships built since 2010 at least, and the tonnage, gross tonnage of the production, so to speak, was growing steadily. But now we have this news. Manturov says that it will be a National Wealth Fund. What is National Wealth Fund? It was the fund which had been created with from the profits of Russia selling its oil and gas. And at some point of time, there was the what is called budget rule, which wouldn't allow touch anything from this National Wealth Fund until it reached 10.4% of the Russia's GDP. Recently, it was correctly and about finally about time, it was reduced to 7.5, I believe. So you have about 3% of the, which are huge money actually. These are tens upon tens of billions of dollars if you, but again, dollars is not useful unit anymore. These are trillions of rubles. And finally, those trillions of rubles begin to work for Russia's development, which which is about time. And of course, the fact that it goes into the space industry and it goes into shipbuilding and boosting Russia's fleet, and that is why Russian shipyards such as Zvezda have been created, and Zvezda is still not completed, but it's already producing those Afromax tankers and LNG transports already. It's there. They're producing it, you can look it up. These are 100,000 tons displacement huge ships, and Russia is building them. So now it's going to get a huge boost and accelerate tremendously. And this is because finally somebody evidently has been removed from the financial ministry who were lobbying for not using this independent national wealth fund, and finally the money, gigantic sums from this national wealth fund started to flow into Russian real economy, of course. And this is absolutely crucial, especially when you consider this headline. And they say that, of course, Europe's short-sighted LNG strategy explained. First, Europe doesn't have any strategy, short-sighted or not, because they don't have the people who actually can do any kind of the strategic planning in Europe. The same goes correctly for the United States. And look at this. That's what even this guy, writes, and you probably wouldn't consider him any kind of the anti-Western person, but look at this. The current optimism in Europe about future energy security is once again based on the wrong assessments. Well, of course it is. I mean, the same goes for the United States. An increasing amount of reports published during the last couple of weeks are warning that if Europe is not getting its act together, it could be facing a possible new energy crisis, or at the very least a repeat of a very high prices during the winter 2023-2024. And that's what he's playing. So little attention has been paid to global developments which suggest that demand for natural gas will continue to rise, but also that countries like China, India, Japan, and South Korea are increasingly seeking long-term LNG supply contracts. Do you want to guess from several times with who will they be looking for the long-term LNG contracts? No, I'm not talking about only Middle East, Qatar and all that, no. We're talking about Russia, of course. And if you look of the events of Russian-Indian cooperation of the last 2 weeks, they are stunning. They are absolutely stunning. Not only Russia is the largest India's oil supplier, we're talking about the whole shebang with building the transport infrastructure and developing LNGs, and Russians building those LNG carriers, and it just, you begin to look at this, it's just colossal economic development. But in a typical American, present American and even European fashion, the little country of Hungary, the proud Hungary, which doesn't want to commit energetic and economic and national suicide. Look at this. We now have those news that US to take actions against Hungary for sanctions busting. You know what sanctions busting was? Well, Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó met with Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak on Tuesday to discuss additional natural gas supplies for 2023, Reuters reported. And guess what? Russians also confirmed this, and they confirmed that Gazprom will be happy to oblige and supply Hungary with whatever the additional volumes she needs. Well, few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, when this whole situation was developing with the sanctions, and then of course after the start of the special military operations, I wrote that unless Europe really wants to commit suicide, which is the case it seems, Hungary will become a very, very rich country because, well, Viktor Orban is a very smart guy and he understands where the future, economic future of this super continent, Eurasia, is. And that is why Hungary is, in a full-blown economic cooperation mode with Russia, and Russians don't care about, ideology of Hungary. They understand that it's good to see the conservative, culture-preserving government isn't there, but Hungary also gets some contracts for which is being built there, nuclear power stations, and there are some other things which Hungary does for Russian economy actually. And when you look at it, it's like, wow. And now you have those additional gas volumes. I wonder why. Well, sure, the reason the Hungarians might become very rich, I mean, they will be doing just fine, is because, of course, they can also resell their excessive volumes of gas to those Europeans. But of course, the United States cannot allow this, and they now talking about sanctions on NATO and European Union full member. There you go. This is everything you need to know about the geopolitics of the current American elites. And which brings us, of course, to this other thing, which is, it's now becoming just literally nauseating. First, Cy Hirsch says that, oh yeah, you know, we have now, and RIA News published that Hirsch stated about the fact that Pentagon is now on the level of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, prepares the draft of the contract agreement on Ukraine in case Russia sustains defeat there. Well, I mean, I don't even know how to describe it and how to comment on this, but if true, that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about Pentagon and people who really run American military, because evidently they don't understand what real war is. Well, actually, not evidently. Many of them, they don't. But the point is, I don't know, Cy Hirsch is in his kind of own, element here, and he also stated that Zelensky stole $400 million. I am absolutely disappointed with this, because $400 million only. I expected a couple billions at least, but hey, Hirsch said it's $400 million. So what can I say? I wish I could have $1 million of that, but what do I know? And when you look at this, including those famous, so to speak, leaks, Russians already kind of reacted to this appropriately. As Mr. Rybkov, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Russian Federation, stated, he said, the documents may have been deliberately planted. Because the US is a party in the conflict in Ukraine, it is essentially waging a hybrid war against us. Such tricks to deceive the enemy, meaning Russia, are possible. And he says, I'm not saying anything definitely, but I assume different scenarios are plausible here. So, and as I already stated, the different scenarios, and I will repeat what I was speaking about in the last two videos, two scenarios, which actually, when they combine, they create the third scenario, which is the combination of the previous two. One of them is somehow to discredit Biden, while in the same time trying to provide some operational influence for Russians. And the Russians, of course, already laughing at it. I mean, because Russia operates on a completely different level of the strategic analysis and has a highly developed ISR complex, which allows Russia to basically not paying attention to some kind of, kindergarten level, Hollywood level misinformation, operation. Or secondly, as I already stated, which looks increasingly like this, is the fact also is to find the ramp off. The United States desperately needs the way out, because obviously we know what is happening militarily, and when you look at this, it's just like, those two scenarios combined, which creates this third scenario. So Rybkov is absolutely correct when he says that it could be a deliberate plan. And pardon me, the key question here is not that the documents are not authentic. They are. It's the fact that it shows you the level of the complete confusion, actually, on a strategic level within the very high level of the American government bureaucracy. And I listened to what Mr. Austin was speaking about, talking about T-55 tanks. You have to really scratch your head, I mean, and this is the guy who is Secretary of Defense. And he lies. He lies non-stop. Not only he doesn't understand the meaning of, for example, about, I believe it was 120 T-55s, which have been shipped to the, not so much front lines, but they are used as the mobile artillery at the, what is called block posts. They are excellent for this task, and you don't need to have any kind of sophisticated ballistic computer or things of this nature. They are simply excellent gun, plain and simple. And when he talks about because of that Russia is running out of tanks, somebody give him the lessons about Russian economy. And speaking of which, and again, keep in mind, this is International Monetary Fund data, which has to be taken with a huge grain of salt. But even this, they show it for 2024. It's Statista and its projection. As you can see yourself that this is the dynamics of the economies. First, US economy is not even second. It is smaller than India's, plain and simple. And despite the fact that, of course, for obvious reasons, because the population is 4 times smaller, the United States has a much higher standard of living, but again, it's also losing the standard of living. So India should be pretty much after China. Now, Indonesia, it's a whole other story, but Russia and Japan are fighting for their position right now. And the rest, you can see yourself, basically what is called the degeneration of the Western economies. And again, this is World Bank and International Monetary Fund, and you have to take it with a great grain of salt, because most of this information also is based on the GDP numbers, which are, for example, in case of the United States, fake. And not only fake, you look at the GDP numbers, the way, even if they calculate it as the PPP, which is purchase parity power, and you will see yourself that basically it's still all baloney. And again, India economically right now is larger in terms of real economy than the United States. India, for all its huge problems, for all its huge social and cultural problems, India already produces, I mean, much more than the United States. So does China. So, and if you look at the what is called third, fourth place in terms of the economies, yes, it is Japan and Russia which are beginning to kind of converge on this issue. And we can talk about this later. We will, because it is absolutely crucial in understanding of the development of the world as we see it today. But in conclusion, what I want to say, there was a wonderful moment which you could see today with Mr. Musk. As much as I don't like Musk, in his interview to some BBC lowlife, these were about 2.5 most delightful minutes when Elon Musk basically wiped the floor with this BBC lowlife and moron who was trying to accuse Musk of something which he indeed didn't do, about some kind of the woke things. And he stated to his face, you just lied. And you can see how for 2.5 minutes this poor British prostitute tries to avoid answering any kind of questions, how he stutters sweating. And when you look at this, it is a delightful 2.5 minutes, and you have to watch it to understand what I'm talking about, because basically all Western established media and all their journalists are amoral, unethical types who are, and they are in a broader sense, absolutely uncultured people. And that reminds, if you want to kind of have a little bit flashback, Mr. Aliyev, Ilham Aliyev, the president of Azerbaijan Republic, he also 2 years ago humiliated, wiped the floor with another BBC prostitute. And when you look at this, and it was such a delight, he literally demolished this lady, which thought that she can actually behave like an arrogant ass with the president of the independent country. Well, he spoke better English than her, actually. So, and when you look at this, this is like, oh yeah, this is wonderful. I like those developments. And this is my kind of a review of today's headlines, if you wish, and some of those headlines are really good, frankly. And what can I say? As always, guys, I really have to express my profound gratitude to my patrons and people who support me. So, and those of you who like what I'm doing, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please support me on the Patreon or on Buy Me a Coffee or two. And that will be my talk for you guys today. Have a nice rest of your week, and I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.